Throughout human history, there have been questions that never disappear. They are not carved into stone tablets, nor clearly written into laws or decrees. Yet, they quietly persist in human thought across generations. These are questions about origins, identity, and the value of human beings themselves. One of these questions revolves around an ancient book that has profoundly shaped world history: the Bible. More specifically, the question is, does the Bible mention Black people? At first glance, this may seem like a purely religious inquiry, but when we look more deeply into history, we realize that this question has never been only about faith. It is tied to periods when people began to divide one another, judge one another, and even deny one another's worth based on appearance and skin color. For centuries, the Bible was not read only in churches or places of worship. It was cited in royal courts, in legal systems, and in decisions that shaped the fate of entire communities. Because of this, the way people understood and interpreted the Bible sometimes carried a weight far greater than the ancient words originally written. Some believe that even if the Bible does not speak directly, it still alludes to Black people. Others argue that the Bible makes no reference to skin color or race at all. And there were also periods in history when biblical passages were cut, misinterpreted, or exploited to justify domination and discrimination. In that context, the question of Black people in the Bible gradually became a mystery that endured for centuries. It is not only a question about a religious text, but also about how people see themselves and others. But to approach this question fairly, one important point must be clarified from the beginning. The Bible is an ancient text. It was written in a world very different from modern society. When the Bible was written, people had no concept of race or skin color as we understand them today. The ancient world did not classify people as black or white. People were identified by lineage, tribe, and the land where they lived. Therefore, asking about skin color in the Bible actually reflects modern concerns more than the concerns of those who wrote the Bible. So why does this question still exist today? Perhaps because deep within every human being, there is a deeply human need to see oneself in humanity's shared story, to know one has not been forgotten, and to know that one's worth is not determined by appearance. And it is from here that our journey begins. To understand whether the Bible mentions Black people, we must return to the earliest pages of this book and view them through the lens of history, slowly, carefully, and without prejudice. To continue this journey of uncovering the mystery, we must pause and look at the Bible within its true historical context. An ancient text cannot be properly understood if it is read only through the lens of the modern world. The Bible was not written in an era of clearly defined national borders. At that time, passports and modern political systems did not exist. Most importantly, there was no concept of race in the biological or social sense we use today. The ancient world was fundamentally different from the modern world. People defined themselves through genealogy, tribe, and the land in which they lived. In that era, people did not ask which race they belonged to. Instead, they asked who their father was and which lineage they came from. They also asked which land they were born in. A person was identified as Egyptian, Canaanite, Cushite, or Israelite, not as black or white. This becomes especially important when we ask the question, does the Bible mention Black people? If the writers of the Bible themselves did not have a concept of skin color as a way to classify humanity, then searching for such concepts in the text is an imposition of modern thinking. The language of the Bible clearly reflects this reality. When describing people, the Bible focuses on ancestral lineage and blood relationships. It also emphasizes place of residence and connection to the community. Physical appearance, especially skin color, is rarely treated as important. It is not used to define identity or human worth. Even when the Bible describes a specific individual, the details that receive emphasis are their actions, their faith, or their role in history, not their outward appearance. Furthermore, the Bible was not formed in a short period of time. It developed over many centuries, written by many different authors, across many lands and historical contexts. The Bible reflects how ancient people understood the world, a world in which differences were perceived through culture and geography, not through modern biological concepts. Therefore, when people today ask questions about skin color in the Bible, they are often carrying the concerns and experiences of their own time, a time that has witnessed racism, oppression, and injustice. These wounds are real and undeniable, but they cannot be used to read an ancient text without care. Understanding the historical context helps us avoid a serious mistake. That mistake is reading the Bible as if it were written for the modern world. Only by placing it back in its proper time can we understand why skin color was never the focus of the story from the beginning. When opening the very first pages of the Bible, the story does not begin with nations or different peoples. It begins with one human being, and then a family. According to the book of Genesis, God created Adam and Eve. They are presented as the first human beings in human history. This carries foundational meaning for the entire question we are exploring. For if all human beings originate from Adam and Eve, then from the very beginning, the Bible places all humanity within a single, shared story. There is no original division. There are no multiple, separate origins for different groups of people. In this creation story, the Bible does not mention skin color. It does not describe detailed physical appearance or assign biological traits to distinguish people. What is emphasized is that human beings are created in the image of God. Human value, therefore, does not come from outward appearance. It comes from life itself and the dignity that is given. As the descendants of Adam and Eve multiply and spread across the earth, the Bible continues to describe human development as a single shared flow. Differences gradually appear over time, but they are not presented as divisions of higher or lower. They are the result of history, of people living in different lands, with different environments and conditions. This becomes especially important when we ask questions about Black people. If the Bible affirms that all humans share a common ancestor, then every group of people today is a descendant of the same human family. Within this logic, there is no concept of any group being created as inherently different or inferior from the beginning. Furthermore, the story of Adam and Eve is not told to explain biological diversity in the modern scientific sense. It is told to convey a moral and human-centered message. Human beings have responsibility toward one another, responsibility toward the world, and responsibility toward their own origins. Searching for racial classifications in this story can therefore shift the focus, away from what the Bible intends to emphasize from the beginning. When we look back at the story of Adam and Eve, one thing becomes very clear. The Bible begins with unity, not division. And from this foundation, questions about skin color are understood in an entirely different way. After the story of humanity's beginning with Adam and Eve, the Bible continues with a pivotal event. This event is the Great Flood, marking a new phase in human history according to the Bible. After the flood, only Noah and his family survived. From this point, the story of human origins continues through Noah's 3 sons. These 3 sons are Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Their names appear many times throughout the Bible. They play an important role in explaining the formation of ancient peoples. According to the book of Genesis, the descendants of Shem, Ham, and Japheth gradually spread across the world. Chapter 10, often called the Table of Nations, lists many lineages and lands that came from these 3 sons. What is notable is how the Bible presents human diversity. This diversity is described through geography and genealogy, not through skin color or physical appearance. Each lineage is associated with different regions on the ancient map. Japheth is commonly linked to regions in the north and west. Shem is associated with the Middle East. Ham is associated with regions to the south. These regions include lands later connected with Africa. However, the Bible simply records who gave birth to whom and where they settled. The text provides no description of skin color, nor does it mention biological traits. This shows that in the biblical perspective, differences between peoples are not signs of divided value. They reflect the process of human movement, settlement, and adaptation to different lands. Human diversity is presented as a natural outcome of history, not as the result of a deliberate classification. It is here that many historical misunderstandings begin. Modern readers often assign specific racial traits to each lineage, but this reading does not reflect the biblical text. It arises from modern thinking, not from the ancient world in which the story was written. When read slowly and carefully, the story is not meant to explain skin color. It is meant to explain why humanity spread across the world, and why peoples have different histories and lands. From this perspective, the Bible maintains a consistent message. Humanity is diverse, yet shares a single origin. As the biblical story continues to unfold through the flow of history, Africa gradually appears as an inseparable part of the ancient world. Contrary to the common belief that the Bible revolves only around the Middle East, the text repeatedly mentions lands belonging to ancient Africa. This reveals a deep connection between the region and early human history. One of the most frequently mentioned lands is Egypt. In the Bible, Egypt is not merely a place name. It is presented as a major center of ancient civilization. Egypt held strong influence economically, politically, and culturally. Many important biblical figures traveled to Egypt. Some lived there for extended periods. Others sought refuge there during times of upheaval. This shows that Africa was never outside the biblical flow of history. Instead, it was an active part of the story. Alongside Egypt, the Bible also mentions Cush. This land is often associated by scholars with ancient Ethiopia or Nubia. Cush is described as a region of significant geographic importance, rich in resources, and connected to neighboring civilizations. Yet, just like Egypt, the Bible does not describe the people of Cush by skin color or physical appearance. It refers to them simply through the name of the land and their lineage. This clearly reflects the mindset of the ancient world. People were defined by where they belonged, not by biological traits. The Bible's references to African lands do not serve as racial classifications. They are straightforward historical records, recording the existence and role of these regions in the ancient world. However, in modern debates, Africa is often directly linked to questions about Black people in the Bible. This association largely arises from contemporary ways of thinking, in which skin color has become a prominent factor in classifying people. But this reading does not reflect the spirit of the ancient text. When the Bible is read slowly and carefully, it becomes clear that Africa is not portrayed as inferior or isolated. African lands appear alongside other regions, mentioned as ordinary parts of the ancient world. The absence of skin color descriptions is not an omission. It is a sign that skin color was not a concern of the biblical authors. And from here, the story leads us toward one of the greatest misunderstandings in biblical history, the so-called curse. The curse in the Bible and its misinterpretation through history. Throughout the entire discussion about whether the Bible mentions Black people, no section has been more controversial or more misunderstood than the story of the so-called curse. For centuries, this passage has been quoted and distorted, and used as a tool to justify discrimination and oppression. But when the text is read carefully, the truth is entirely different. The story most often referenced appears in the book of Genesis. It takes place after the Great Flood. In this account, Noah pronounces a curse on Canaan. Canaan is the son of Ham. One point must be made clear from the very beginning. The curse is not directed at Ham, and it is certainly not directed at all of Ham's descendants. It is aimed at one specific individual. That individual is Canaan. This curse is tied to historical conflicts between peoples within the context of the ancient world. Over time, however, especially during the Middle Ages and later during the transatlantic slave trade, this biblical passage began to be interpreted in a completely different way. Some people assigned the curse to the entire lineage of Ham. They then linked Ham's lineage to Africa and ultimately connected it to black people. This is a chain of assumptions, not the direct content of the Bible. When the Bible was written, the concept of cursed skin color did not exist. The text makes no reference to skin color, nor does it associate the curse with physical appearance or race. Linking this curse to black people is a product of later history. It emerged when people sought to legitimize domination and enslavement. Many modern biblical scholars have closely examined this passage, and they have reached a shared conclusion. Discriminatory interpretations do not reflect the original meaning of the Bible. They instead reflect the prejudices and interests of societies that exploited religion. The story of the curse, therefore, reveals how sacred texts can be distorted when they are read through the lens of power, bias, and self-interest. When religion is exploited from faith to a tool of power. Human history shows that anything with great influence over people can be exploited. Religion, with its power to shape belief, morality, and social behavior, is no exception. The Bible carries deeply humanistic messages. Yet throughout history, it has been used by certain individuals and institutions in ways that contradict its original spirit. In many historical periods, the Bible was not only a book of faith, it was also regarded as a powerful source of authority. Words believed to be the Word of God can produce obedience. They can reinforce power, and they can shape the behavior of entire communities. For this reason, when societies entered periods of territorial expansion and conflict, when the exploitation of human beings increased, religion was sometimes drawn in as a tool of justification. In the context of slavery and colonialism, some people sought to interpret the Bible in ways that benefited themselves. Passages were removed from their historical context, read selectively, and presented as evidence to support discrimination and oppression. This did not arise from the core message of the Bible. It arose from humanity's desire to legitimize its own actions. What is striking is that the same Bible, in different periods of history, became a source of inspiration for resistance and liberation movements. Many oppressed people found in the Bible stories of justice, of freedom, and of hope. This shows that the problem does not lie in the text itself, but in how people choose to read and use it. The difference between faith and the exploitation of religion lies in intention. Faith seeks to elevate human dignity, while the exploitation of religion seeks to control and divide people. When religion is placed in the hands of power, it can be transformed into a tool that maintains unjust systems, rather than becoming a voice of conscience. Therefore, when looking back at history, we must clearly distinguish the Bible as a sacred text from interpretations driven by political or economic interests. The fact that some people used the Bible to justify racial discrimination does not mean that the Bible supports such actions. From here, the story leads us to a deeper question about the Bible's true message concerning humanity. The true message of the Bible. Human value transcends skin color. When we set aside distorted interpretations and the dust of history, the Bible gradually reveals a consistent message about human value. Throughout its books, stories, and teachings, what is emphasized is not physical appearance, not geographic origin, and not skin color. What is emphasized is human dignity and the relationship between people. From the very first pages, the Bible affirms that human beings are created in the image of God. This phrase does not speak about outward form, it speaks about inner value. It implies that every person carries a sacred dignity, a dignity that cannot be taken away and cannot be ranked by any external factor. In the stories that follow, the Bible repeatedly shows that God does not choose people based on origin, nor based on social status. Central figures are not always powerful or wealthy. They do not necessarily belong to a so-called chosen or elite people. Instead, many who are chosen come from humble circumstances. Some are even looked down upon by society. This sends a clear message. Human value is not measured by background or appearance. The Bible also emphasizes moral responsibility toward one another. Teachings about justice, mercy, and love appear again and again. In this context, every form of discrimination contradicts the core spirit of the text, whether based on skin color, ethnicity, or status. Notably, in many stories, people from distant lands or different cultures are portrayed as faithful and morally grounded. This shows that the Bible does not build rigid boundaries between us and them. Instead, it continually expands the idea of a shared human community. When we return to the question of Black people in the Bible, we realize that the silence about skin color is not exclusion, it is a deliberate choice. By not emphasizing appearance, the Bible directs attention to how people live, how they treat one another, and how they embody moral values through everyday actions. From this foundation, people may differ in appearance and culture, yet they are recognized as equal in dignity. And it is here that the story moves toward its final reflection and conclusion. The real mystery and conclusion. What do people read from the Bible? After traveling through the full historical journey, from the earliest pages of the Bible to interpretations and debates that have lasted for centuries, we can now return to the original question with a calmer and more comprehensive perspective. Does the Bible truly mention Black people? When placed within its proper historical context, the answer gradually becomes clear. The Bible does not mention Black people as a separate race, nor does it classify human beings according to skin color. This absence is not a denial. It reflects a historical reality. When the Bible was written, the modern concept of race did not yet exist. But if the mystery is not found in the text itself, then where does it truly lie? Perhaps the real mystery lies in how people have read the Bible across different periods of history. When societies faced war, slavery, colonialism, and discrimination, people carried their fears, ambitions, and prejudices into their interpretations of a sacred text. As a result, the Bible, though silent about skin color, was used to justify division. This reveals a difficult truth. Texts do not create injustice on their own, but people can use texts to conceal injustice. In darker chapters of history, the Bible was quoted to legitimize what its own spirit opposed. Yet that same Bible, in other moments, became a source of comfort, hope, and strength for the oppressed. When we look back at the entire story, one truth becomes unmistakably clear. The Bible does not tell the story of a single group of people. It tells the story of humanity as a whole. People may differ in appearance and culture, yet they share a common origin, a shared story, and a dignity that cannot be divided or diminished.